The first rule in grip sport is you tell everyone about grip sport.
Crushing, pinch grip, thick bar, wrists.
If the best guy in the world can't lift 100 pounds on it, I don't give a shit about it.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Grip Show. And a lot of people have been bugging me. Adam, you're probably not even aware of it, but since the first episode and featuring you on the inch dumbbell episode, you have been one of the most requested guests that I get. Everybody's like, when's Adam coming back? Or can you get Adam back on? And I'm like, I don't know, man. When the time's right, we'll work it out. But Adam Glass back on the Grip Show. So how you doing, Adam?
Zach, thanks for having me back, man. I'm doing really good.
Yeah. So
I
I'll keep going. Yeah.
well, I'm excited to be back because the reality is that so much growth has come in the last couple of years, and I personally attribute a lot of the growth and interest in both the expansion of the activity and the sports side of it to people like you and others who are saying, look, this is cool. The only reason you guys don't think it's cool is you haven't seen it. So the guys that are putting the information out, the guys that are talking, I especially love the recaps of contest that's going on now. I love that you're profiling people. It's one of those that, to use a word that I very rarely use in my life, it is something that grip deserves, is to have hardworking people who are both allowing the conversation to go forward and creating documented resources that can be seen later. Like every single episode that you have recorded at this point, if somebody just found grip today, like they found this episode on your show right now, the very first starting point I tell them is, we'll go back and watch all the other episodes. And I'll tell you what you'll be farther ahead than I was my first 5 years. So like for me, man, it really feels good to be able to come on out and participate for all the people that are doing great content like this, because we're at that age where there's never too much information, but there certainly is a lot of shitty information.
Yeah.
And you're a person who, you go to people who can direct. If you're talking about this box, this topic, you're a good guy who goes and gets people who can actually tell you something about what's in the box. So the fact that anyone has asked you to have me back out, that feels great. Thank you, man.
Yeah, no, like they've been behind the scenes hounding me. And if I ever say like an ask me anything or something, hey, who you guys want to hear from? It one of the most popular requests always. So but yeah, man, and I think it's good because I brought this up before, but if it wasn't for really like, I know there's others that are involved, but if it wasn't for the library of videos that you and Jed Johnson had on your YouTube channels, I don't know that I'd even be sitting here and even be a part of the sport, because you guys did the same thing. You know what I mean? As far as just capturing competition footage, tutorials on different things, just all this stuff that was almost ahead of its time, really, to me. But that was my intro to the sport, was just having stuff documented in that fashion. So this is just kind of like me, I guess, in some way, kind of creating another resource. But that was my intro.
Well, I saw that 200-pound level dumbbell lift you did the other day. So I'll tell you that whatever you're watching and listening to, it's working for you, bro.
Yeah,
good lift, man. That was real good.
Yeah, I just got to get the left hand to catch up a little bit. I think my left hand is like, I can lift 180-pound inch bell lefty. About 185, 190, it'll start to die off on me. But yeah, you always have one hand that maybe is a little bit different and better than the others. But yeah, no, that was a pretty good lift. Came up and felt pretty good. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna see how long I can hold it, and got a couple seconds out of it. But yeah, man. So yeah, thanks for that.
I'll tell you the secret to handiness is that bones grow over time. So we'll see if my lighting in here is good enough. Can you see how much bigger my right hand is than my left at this point?
Yeah.
My right almost over 5/16 of an inch longer than my left. You got all these little bitty bones, and if you can just add a tiny bit of growth on top and bottom over the years, they will change. There was a grip board interview. One of the guys reached out to me in like 2013 or 14. And one of the things they ask is to measure your hand from the crease of your wrist.
Mhm.
And both of my hands have increased pretty substantially in length over the last 15 years of training. So the thing that I tell people is like, whichever side you're stronger on, quit fighting it. Because the sport is super asymmetrical anyway. Like half the events are one-handed or more, so just go with it.
Yeah. Not for sure.
It looks like so I have been retired out of competition since 2022. I had a terrible, terrible, terrible hand injury. And I think when that happened, it was one of those, I didn't think that would be what would slow down my interest to compete, but it just took forever to really improve. And even now, even to this day, it is painful in certain angles. Like there are certain events that, like, man, I don't think I'll ever be able to really hub lift right-handed any amount of real weight unless I'm just solely on like these two fingers, and then torsion spring grippers. I'm almost out on it. Between a wrist
Gotcha.
that I had in 2011 and the finger thing, even putting a trainer in my hand and starting to reach around and set, it's like there's like a twisted up nerve bundle in here. There's a big ass section of scar tissue, and it just feels like I'm tapping on wood when I do this. So it's weird because it's numb like all the time, but then I pick up a gripper and then it's painful. So I don't really know what I'll do, but I've paid attention, and this last year has been an interesting bag. And the thing that I was excited to talk to you about on the show for today was, okay, as a community, we kind of all hedged our bets on a couple things in the last 5 years.
Mhm.
And I feel like the dividends have come back in. And as someone who enjoys looking at finances, my answer for everyone would be, we lost. Okay. Like we all placed our bets and we made some investments, and our investments are like the bills back in, we have lost. So what do I mean? In 2015, 2016, you had King Kong gaining some momentum, and that looks good. You had a slowdown in overall what was happening with the expos. Like Ode was doing his thing out on the West Coast. There was a stretch of time where there was no real big kind of grip thing happening at the Arnold. Like I think even the GNC grip gauntlet that they held for years got pulled out during that section of time, right? So there was a couple conversations that were had, and one of them would be that these influencers that were like gaining momentum, that they were gonna open up the floodgates, and we had some really interesting people who got in on it. The rise of competitive arm wrestling is an interest on YouTube. If you remember, really got going. Everyone was saying, "Oh my God, this is going to be so good for the sport." Okay. The rise of just these superstar personalities like Juji Mufu, Larry Wheels, Eddie Hall getting all the attention, Brian Shaw getting all this attention. There was this idea that so much was going to come out of it. And then what I was a part of for the start of it was really the return of grip sport being competitive at some of these big expos in a wider phase. So when I look at the number of contests that I can currently see documented in between the various federations and people that are tracking, and I'm looking at the number of participants who are showing up, I'm going to say that the community didn't get there, but it makes sense why. Okay, and the reason why, bro, is we hoped that someone was going to do all the heavy lifting for us, which is kind of funny because we're the guys who all like to lift big shit, but apparently we want someone else to do the hard work for us to grow as a community, right? So today I want to present a call to action for everyone who claims that they either want to see the quality of the sport rise, or they want to see an expansion of interest in people who do the activity or do the sport. And guys, you got to understand, competitive grip sporting activities and an interest of grip strength are two completely different things. Like, you could be someone who competes in a grip sport, but your total grip training might be extremely specialized and limited. You also might be someone who does an expansive amount of grip training, and yet for you, you don't compete for whatever reason. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not really about scoreboards and leaderboards. And I mean, what do we got, Zach? About 500,000 world record holders right now between all the different handles and companies that are selling bullshit. Is that about right? 500,000?
Yeah, that's if you count the official ones, but I also see people constantly posting unofficial world records, whatever that means. I don't know exactly what an unofficial world record is, but yeah, there's those too.
An unofficial world record just means that you don't know enough guys who play the sport, and you do think you are currently the strongest. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's a good day of training. That's what an unofficial world record is.
It's all good. I've probably got a couple unofficial world records. My problem is I can't find the guy who's doing more than those yet, but it'll get there. With some guys coming in, absolutely we'll get there. All right, so guys, let's talk about a concept. The North American grip scene is currently a couple different federations. Okay, so you have the old school was NAGS, now it's GSI. Okay, and that really has been held together most primarily from the efforts of guys like Jed, Eric. I'm thinking who else has helped with the actual record keeping. Aaron Corcoran. Like, the record keeping is one of the mainstays that's really held it together. And then very much the actual promotion and work of the guys who have been, coming out for King Kong promotion like year after year. Some of the guys are mainstay. They've hosted probably 8-9 times. Yeah. Okay. That is like the established league. You've got Armlifting USA, which has caught on across a couple different regions, and that number has been growing. You have the Rogue events, which is where you're getting a lot of attention. You have the expo competitions and all the other shit that's happening at the expo where you're seeing that. Okay, so what is the problem? Well, the first problem is the number of competitors season to season has been kind of slowish, but I understand why that is. There is a lack that I see right now of like the backyard or the garage competition. All right. So when you look at where this got going from, and because the question has always got to be, bro, how did we get here? Because if we want to go farther, we should understand, how do we get here? The sport was first grown at a local level across the country in different areas where people started training groups. They invited people to come out. They were not wrapped up necessarily in like the idea of sanctions, records. If this lift jives with how other people have done the lift in the past, and the focal point was people came together, they had to be ready on that day, they had to compete on that day, and whoever won that day was the strongest guy that day. All right. And yeah. The attitude was that if you wanted to be the guy who like set a record, that was where contests like nationals really came in. You know what I mean? If you said, I'm going to set the record, the expectation would be is that it would be done with kind of the most active members of the sport, or maybe that higher level of the competition. And today we have people that are doing, contest, and it's like them and their wife and their neighbor, and they're setting world records on their home gym equipment. And it's not that that's like super bad, except if that carries forward, the sport looks smaller over time. And to me, when I look at it today, I'm kind of taken aback that it's not bigger than it was like 5 years ago. Like what was the King Kong count from this last one, bro? What was 2023 King Kong?
Man, I would have to check in with Eric about that, but I want to say close to 300.
Okay, that's not bad. That's not
Yeah.
bigger. Bad. What was Super Series?
I think they just the one that they recently just wrapped up. I think it was a little over 300, maybe.
Yeah.
So we'll say low threes. But
So and the thing is if you check both those lists, there's a huge amount of crossover. Right? Like if I
oh yeah.
the other list and I say who's on both lists, that the lion's share of that list crosses over really quick.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
What's the first thing that I would say? I would say for the people who say, I really want to see the sport get bigger, or I want to see stronger guys coming into sport, or I want to see this, or I want to see that. I would encourage you to do what I have done multiple times in multiple states, and it's build your local group up first. Like if you're a person and you're currently asking yourself who's going to be at this contest or that contest that's not in your local area, like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, except it would be more exciting for you to really figure out who's coming to your contest next. Okay. And it gets into what is your next contest going to be? Well, man, make it fun first and foremost. Like I haven't seen a contest I've even had an interest in doing in 2 years because they all look the fucking same at this point. There's so many variations of the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that would be, if I was a power lifter and I said that, I would sound like a retard. Like, well, no, dude, this sport is 3 lifts. But the thing is, when you talk about grip strength is a lot of different things. Grip strength is so many different things that how many types of competitions could be held. It becomes as simple as, okay, I know, I can get 15 guys to come out and lift this weekend. Well, okay, what would be fun for this group of people? I don't know. Maybe if you hung a fucking towel over the bar and everyone had to grab the towel and hang on for time. If that's, you know what I mean? It could be all these different things. There was a time that going to a contest, they'd throw everything at you. In a given day, you'd do axle, you'd do grippers, you'd do a medley of blobs, you'd bend steel bars, tear decks, you'd do so much outlandish shit. And you'd hit the end of the day and it's like, man, that was a fun contest. And the other thing is you'd walk out with this idea that, this is what I was good at. This is what I was not so good at. As the sport gets narrower and only starts to focus on, this just one way to play it, you're going to cut people out. The whole sport could be so much more than just 5 to 6 inch lifts and no one ever moves their feet. You know what I mean? Like there's all these things that it can be. And the thought that I'd like people to understand is when you look at who is the next person to come into the sport. All right, so Zach, let's look at it by all lifters. Okay, what is the hardest lifting sport in terms of what you have to do to your body? What is the most difficult lifting sport in your estimation?
I mean, I would probably say just because of the amount of movement and stuff like that and the variety, probably strongman to some degree. I mean, if you're just statically loading up and just like powerlifting, maybe I would. So that would be what I would say.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, in my estimation, the hardest lifting sport for people to get into is going to be actual Olympic weightlifting.
Okay. Yeah. And I've never really trained much Olympic lifting, so I don't want to say that I almost treat it like it doesn't exist, but yeah, I got you. That makes sense.
It very much exists, and it very much laughing in most of our faces. And it's important that it requires a total body level of strength, speed, mobility, that at the end of the day, the people who got started in it don't tend to do it forever. You don't, like, there are very few that are competitive level at any real level for many years, because it is extremely taxing. Okay, so that requires all this movement. So then we go down a level, and then strongman. I'm right there with you. Strongman.
Yeah.
You have to be able to move your feet. You have to be able to lift overhead, off the floor, carry, right? So you got to
uneven stuff. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff. Yeah.
There's so many. So then you got people that they can get into that, but the longevity as a sport competitor, it gets diminished because it only takes one injury to where you hit that point that, yeah, you might train strongman, but you might not ever really be able to compete again after a certain injury, or maybe even after a certain part of your life. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. We come down a level, you got powerlifting, right? So for powerlifting, what is going to stop most people is if they lose their ability to either deep squat or to deadlift, right? I mean, yeah. There's a whole bunch of people that they can squat and deadlift, but they would tell you, bro, I am not prepared to like go shoot for a triple body weight deadlift this year or something. Okay. Then you come down a level, and that's where you find our sport. Our sport sits at a point that athletes from all those other sports that had higher mobility requirements can come down to and can go full intensity with their psychology, with their participation, with their enjoyment of the competitive environment, and still do it for either a longer period of time when you look at the longevity, or relatively safer, right? Yeah. We don't have, like, year to year, there's some guys that hurt their finger tendons. There might be a guy here and there that does have a back pain injury, but we're not a sport where you find people have, or maybe bicep tear, that can happen. But overall, we're not a sport where you have devastating injury as a common part of it. Okay, so that right there gives you a clue that if you're someone and you're in your area, and the question is what contest can you go to? And you say, nobody has contests in my area. Well, that means the burden might fall on you. And then who do you invite? Invite people who don't play those other sports anymore, but previously did.
Yeah.
To me, the first roadmap is if you told me right now, Zach, that, hey, if I can put 50 people at a contest in 6 months from now, I get the golden ticket to the Willy Wonka factory. Dude, I could put 50 people in a contest at this point after living out here for a couple of years effortlessly, just because what I would not be looking for? Grip sport competitors. I'd be looking for power lifters, bodybuilders, CrossFitters, rock climbers. I'd be looking for diesel mechanics. I'd be looking for masons and concrete workers, right? I'd be looking for guys that do gymnastics, arm wrestling. The last person I would need to worry about is grip sport. Unfortunately, being that I'm in Texas, the first person I'm calling is Tanner Merkel, so he's going to be who wins today. But yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like the filling a contest is not, it's not that hard when you understand that what you're looking for is people who enjoy competing. And what do you do with that in your local area? You have fun with it. Like, this is what I encourage so many of you guys to do. Go to like David Horn's website, go to the GSI database, go look at contest footage on YouTube of the kind of contests that were being held 10 and 15 years ago. And I really just want you to pay attention to how they all were kind of a similar idea, but they all were a little different. And here's what's hard to do. It's hard to build a leader list off that. But you know what was really unimportant when I think about those years of leaderboards didn't really mean that much. And they didn't mean that much because how stupid of you to walk into a contest and tell everybody how you're the best at this event or that event and lose the event that day, right? Yeah. So it was just a lot easier those days to just show up and do the best you could do. And, some guys consistently did well, and some guys consistently would get better, and some people, they had fun. Zach, my thought is this, man. If the people hearing this today can understand that, here's the deal: grip sport is not going to be bigger in 5 years from now from the next Larry Wheels video, it's not going to get bigger because of the results of the Arnold Classic. It's not going to be bigger when the next 3 equipment companies put out yet another fucking rolling handle. Dude, the sport is really going to get bigger when everyone understands that if you want to play the sport, it does not have to be expensive. It's not about anybody making money. There's nothing wrong with people making money. I think everybody should make money. But at the same time, my father-in-law had a little watering hole on this property that they bought a couple of years ago. It was about a 20 by 30 pond, and they paid to have an excavator come on out and trench it out to get it deep enough to always have water in it, okay? And 1 year they paid to have some bass introduced to the pond.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother-in-law's father had to come move on the property as health problems. So he started fishing at the pond, and he loved it. But he fished at the pond every day, and some days other people would come join him. And within a year, you know what happened to the pond?
I mean, did they fish it out, or
There were no fish left.
Yeah.
And that is a story that hopefully all promoters can hear what I'm talking about. If your pond of competitors is so fucking small that the 2 elite contests of the year don't even have 300 athletes, you maybe need to reconsider how hard you're going to try to squeeze these people, right? But then again, if the 300 competitive guys all were throwing local events that were having 10, 15, 20 competitors show up on any given event, and you had literally grip contests happening on any weekend of the year in any city in the United States of America, our sport could have 2,000 to 3,000 competitors in 2 years, right? And that would start to approach what actual competitive powerlifting or strongman looks like. Because if you look at how many active, actually have competed in this calendar year strongman competitors and powerlifters there are, I mean, it's not that much more than that. You know what I mean? Like, lifting sports in America it's not nearly as big as we like to make it look on social media. And the irony is, this really is the lifting sport that could have the biggest numbers, because we could easily include so many people. Like, oh, hey, man, I get it. You had a back injury. Your doctor told you to be careful. We can have highly competitive contest, and the heaviest weight that'll be lifted today might not even be 100 pounds. You know what I mean? We could have a gripper event, a hub event. You can have bring out some crazy ass 3-inch rolling handle. Nobody picks up shit on it, and it's still so it's not always about lifts. And even then, if we do want to make it about the biggest lifts, then we also need to not be shitty when bigger, stronger guys come into the sport and clean house. Yeah. Right? Our community is a little guilty of that one too, is you get a couple big guys in, and all of a sudden you realize that, maybe 400 double over axle is not that big of a deal. Because for most of the guys that are 300 pounds plus, it's not. So there's this room for expansion. And the great thing is this would be the activity that really brings out the people that we all get excited about. Like when you were talking to me about, what it was like when you first met Ben, and seeing Ben get into this sport and get into it. Yeah. And I've had multiple over the years that it was just like that, bro, where you get this person and they just have no idea how incredible they are in this arena. It is amazing to watch that person find this new activity that they have a passion for. So the call to action that I would like to bring up for folks who are actively competing, or who want to compete more, or who want to see the sport grow, or who want to squeeze more money out of the community, the answer is the same for all of you people. There really would be a tremendous value to shifting emphasis back to how awesome it is when you have lots of local contests, when you have unique formats that people are doing, We quit fucking worrying about sanction fees. We quit worrying about leaderboards. We quit overemphasizing rules that we don't even follow later when it matters. Like, oh my God, how much crazy shit talking has been happening just this year in the community over lifting form. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? One side of the house says we're going to do this to keep people from not doing good lifts, and then you have problems there, and then you swing the other way, and they're having their own so let's like get away from all that, because if you were a brand new person who had never seen any of this, if you logged on and the discussion being had is an argument between people on what constitutes a good lift and a bad lift, you never would have got into the shit. You know what I mean? Like, you personally, you got into this, saw something, and you thought, damn, I think some of this is cool, and I bet I could do it too. And like, to me, I think, being that I'm at a point where I don't really know what I would do next, if I ever wanted to be back involved in a sport, I don't really know what I would want to do. I can tell you this, is there's nothing I see currently happening in the arena that would make me want to be a participant. There are things I see in the arena that I think would be fun to help other people discover the same kind of, like, man, I got a lot out of my time. I made a lot of friends. I got to travel to places. That was all really great. But when I look at it right now, the big thing I think of is we're just at the point where if you would have asked me 10 years ago how much farther I would have thought the sport would be, I really thought it'd be just so much farther. And I think the reason we failed is we kept hoping that shit that never possibly actually would have worked. And man, that's my call to action. Like, me coming back on a show, I'd like to say to people, like, quit hoping that somebody else figures it out for you. Do what Joe did. Joe in Australia is literally my favorite example of this. Joe somehow finds out about grip somewhere in Instagram.
Yeah.
Joe has no one within like an 8-hour drive of his location. So what does this guy do? He fucking fabricates his own equipment. Okay. Yeah. He starts introducing people in his own previous sport activity. He comes from rock climbing. So obviously the Australian team's got all these super freaks that weigh 150 to 170 pounds that can all pick up an inch now. Then he starts like becoming an evangelist in his own nation, traveling around showing people this. Yeah. And it's funny because, man, 10 years ago, there was no Team Australia. There was no conversation about Australia having, but now you look at it and, dude, they got some badass dudes out there, right?
Yeah, and they just held their first nationals this year as well, which was something that Joe on the previous episode that I had him on was like, man, I'd like to have a nationals or build up to something like that. I just don't know if I could do it. Da 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 da. And sure enough, it was like 6 or 7 months later, there we were having a recap about nationals. Like, no, yeah, you made the shit happen.
Dude,
so.
that to me is the answer for the community as a whole. Like, if you want to see more of this, then do it. Like, no one's stopping you. No one can stop you. Is like the most important, guys, for me, like when I started hosting my local contests when I was in Minnesota in 2010, I didn't reach out to any of the other people and ask if they were okay with me spending my time as I saw fucking fit with my friends. I just started doing it.
Yeah.
And then when I started submitting contest results, the answer became, you guys are going to have to figure out what you're going to do with it, because we're doing contests out here and we're seeing real numbers lifted. So you guys are either going to, accept it or not accept it. And that's fine either way. And then I started going to other people's contests, and then it became super clear, like, okay, there's this thing happening up there and they're getting the momentum. When I got down here, I got, it was in 2017, Tommy, Eric, Tanner all reached out to me because we're all close enough proximity. We started lifting, and then you look at how just more people started coming out. the day we did our first practice, it was not like some kind of, we're gonna do all these different things. It was just people coming together that shared this mutual activity. Everybody was agreeable to be around, and it became a lot of fun. And man, I feel like there's people that are missing out on some of their best years of training right now because they're hoping that somebody else somewhere else is going to make this big thing pop off that'll somehow help them. And to me, it's like, save yourself, build up your local crew, build up your own local area, figure out what you guys like to do. Don't worry about what's the big series that's coming up next year, because it'll be there. No big deal. Don't worry about new rules or new handles or who's got a problem with who that don't, because man, just build up your own thing and watch that. If everybody would just focus maybe on their own backyard for a year or two, I could imagine a King Kong or Super Series where you got 2,000 competitors, like, really easily. That's not even hard to imagine.
Yeah. You know what, Adam? There's a point you brought up that I want to really touch on here. And I want to say one of the people I spoke to about this a while ago was James Fuller. And me and James Fuller had a talk where it was very similar to what you're mentioning, where everybody kind of gets roped into the sanctioning and whatever. And then it's like, oh, we're only contesting this and this is how it's done. And like you mentioned, like, no, you could throw a fucking towel over the pull-up bar and just have people hang on it. Like, that's a possibility. You know what I'm saying? So one of the things was, it's like almost everything that the sport does currently, any organization, is just different variations of a deadlift. But there's not people hanging for time. There's not people really farmers walking, cleaning, snatching. There's so many different movements that you could do.
You know what the dumbest fucking mistake of our entire sport is? The Russians got it right. The Americans totally missed it. How the fuck are we all about grip strength and none of the federations can test a curl? That is madness. Do you know how many guys you could have come to your contest just with a fucking curl event? It is madness that you know what I mean? Like, there are all these things you could have that you can put in the arena of grip strength, and to only make it a deadlifting contest.
Yeah.
It sells the vision and the excitement of all these things it could be. And that's the thing, is some of the guys, I've heard people say things like, we want to draw a line between strongman and grip sport. Why? But why? Yeah. Like, why is it people are so fucking bonered up when they see Brian Shaw lift a blob, but they'd be scared to have Brian Shaw come to a grip contest? Well, that's fucking stupid. If you just, you know what I mean? Like, don't look for a reason to cause a division. Okay. And that just comes back to the 500,000 world record holders that we got. Is people are there's more ego being applied than maybe common sense at times.
Yeah.
I mean, question, dude, if I told you that I'm an undefeated UFC, mixed martial artist, and you said, who have you fought? I said, a bunch of 5-year-olds. What the fuck is wrong with you? But that's what we've got going on right now, is where people are, I mean, how many people are in a given weight class in some of these lighter classes right now? Guys are calling themselves world record holders. And it's like, I'm going to tell you right now, the lightweight classes, dude, when like Korea and China and India catch on to this sport, there ain't going to be some Americans sitting at the 130 or 140 or 150 weight classes, number one. I promise you that. When you
definitely change up. Yeah.
If you look at regionally, we have like no grip activity that I've seen any evidence of in Mexico. Almost none in South America, almost none that's happening in any of the major African locations outside of Middle East, Dubai.
Yeah.
We've nothing in terms of the various Asian nations. So like, even the idea that we have this clue of who would be the strongest in the world right now, we absolutely have no clue. The disconnect between all the North American and Western European grip side compared to the Russian grip side, which is huge in itself. You know, these Russians are doing grip contests where they have 200 competitors at one event.
Yeah.
And we have no idea what's even really going on over there because of, you know, various reasons. But it goes to show you that like that nothing has even started yet. That the sport is like simultaneously, it's at least 25 years old, and at the same time, it hasn't even really begun.
Yeah. And I just think people, man, like I said, everybody gets so roped into it has to be these events, it has to be that. And like, this is what I would almost propose to people as well is like, let's just say you're gunning for some leaderboard, some record list. You need to be sanctioned for that, or that matters to you. You can still sanction for a very low amount of money, have one or two lifts that are sanctioned, and then have another, third or fourth lift that is completely awesome, a wild card, a medley, something crazy, just something out there to branch out a little bit, as opposed to just, well, we got to do all these events and it has to be this way. And like you said, it kind of just gets, I don't know, it just gets boring to a certain, I just don't think we're tapping into the full potential of all the lifts we could be doing.
Well,
And
look
yeah,
at that. So, like, okay, first of all, let's start with the most important question. So, why sanction a contest? There's a couple reasons. So, the first reason you sanction a contest is because you want bookkeeping and record keeping on it. Okay. And why do you have to pay for that? Because you're asking somebody else to take time out of their life to write down your shitty little numbers from your contest on their fucking website that they pay for. So I need people to understand that don't shit on sanctioning fees. What I'm shitting on, the idea that people are getting stuck in this idea that oh well, my lifts, they wouldn't be top 5, but I need to make sure they're on the board. It's like, you know what, dude, first of all, if if your lifts are truly good, go to the big events and have fun. If they're not, if you're not like knocking out in top 10 of a given list that's actually being competitively chased, then don't like build up your whole personal identity on that fucking thing that it matters. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, how are any of these lists? I mean, I'll tell you this, they're not important enough that it's worth using that as the reason to not have an event out if you have the interest in it.
Yeah.
Out of all the contests I've held, I've probably had, I bet half of our contests we've held between all the different locations were for having leaderboard activity, if the other half being not related at all. Why did I have leaderboard activity? Because we had actual leaders on the fucking board at the event.
Yeah.
And it was worth the time. We would have people that would not come lift at a contest that involved having to pay money. There's a couple things that can be said about that, but the most important thing I would say is if you're new trying to build up an area, that's a dumb reason to get your shit knocked out of the way. Like, if you're someone who's saying, okay, I need to charge these people $50 a piece because I plan on having trophies made and medals and man, why are you doing all that shit? Like, dude, do it. Throw a barbecue, go dust off one of your 30 rolling handles, bring out a Captain to Crush 3 and a lifting strap of a 2-pound plate, and have a 2-event format while everyone's waiting to get their hamburger. Like, don't make it such a fucking thing in the beginning.
Yeah.
Certainly don't make it a reason to not invite your friends out, because if they like it and they like the community, well, yeah, then they might be interested in getting that. But to me, like, overemphasizing trophies, medals, records, that stuff, we are too small of a community to be focused on that. It just, I have enough people in my feed that I follow that are got that kind of special touch in their mind that they're still talking about that stuff at this point, and it's like, man, I just feel like people are missing it to some degree. Like, I don't know, man. What, going to a contest and getting to compete with people who absolutely stomp you because they're that much better than you. is a far better life trophy than you went out and ordered medals from your local medal place and gave yourself a gold medal when 3 people came to your deal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I know some of y'all have got a fucking closet in your house full of medals and you awarded yourself half of them. And you know, hey, dude, grow the sport and make it worth something. Because the flip end is let's not do anything that I'm talking about. Let's just assume that I'm an idiot and let's see if in 10 years from now any of this is even still really around at a level where it looks like it's grown, because there's certain people right now that if they just hung up their hat and said I'm done with it, like I can tell you right now, I can think that of 6 people that if those 6 people all right now decided they're sitting down, they're not gonna deal with this shit, they're not even gonna talk about it, they're done with it, it would cripple the contest scene of North American sport for at least 2 or 3 years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there were honestly, I've mentioned that to some people too in discussions where, you know, I think I was on the Grip Sport Latino podcast. And one of the questions someone asked me was like, what did I think things were going to look like in 5 years?
Yeah.
And I said, well, one organization has changed their name or whatever. And the other organization hasn't really been around that long in general. So I said, in 5 years, I mean, there could be 3 more federations. These 2 could not even exist. One of these could morph into something else. You just don't know. Like, it hasn't really been around long enough. Like you said, you're really 1 or 2 people removed from the sport. If we're not necessarily the sport, but organization wise, you're a couple people removed from that just completely imploding. And then what? Is someone going to make a new organization? How's it going to? There's a couple people on each side really keeping the lifeline going,
Yeah.
like, and I'll
Right.
just use one example. Like, let's just say for some odd reason tonight, Jed Johnson says, I'm done. I'm going in a different direction and I'm stepping down from running GSI.
Massive damage.
What does that look like for everybody else? And that's one person,
You know what? Jed pulled everybody's bullshit card a couple of years ago. Is one of my favorite things I've seen him do in the years. Everybody gave Jed so much bullshit online over nationals. Okay, you'll remember the year. I don't know which year it was, but I remember he because he sent emails to all the promoters across country, and he said, "One of you is going to run nationals. So who wants to do it? You get to run it. It's at the venue of your choosing. It's the events of your choosing." And I don't remember that many people actually wanting to pick up and carry the deal.
Yeah.
And that was just one example.
He pretty much ran nationals up until this last year when he removed himself from the polling.
That's it. Jed
And
Harry.
they had a good competition, but Will Giuliani in California picked it up. And I mean, they had a good turnout. I want to say they, is it Dave Depew's gym? I believe. I think that's where they hosted it at. But that was the first time that, Jed just, I mean, he had to fly out and whatever, but it was like, that was really the first time in probably a long time that he didn't have to be the guy, carrying all the weight pretty much because someone else was at least willing to pick it up. But yeah, for several years, I mean, it's like they'd vote and it just still go to Jed or whatever the case was, or other people's events would be weird, or there wouldn't be that many people
And for
hosting
the
competitions. Yeah.
So David Horn did World's Strongest Hands, if I'm remembering correctly, 2010 to 2014.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2014 was the last one. I did 2010, 11, 12, and 13. I didn't do 14. And if I'm remembering how this went, David did not set up the next year, but that's when King Kong got running, when a lot of other promoters who had been World's Strongest Hands said, well, hey, we've really been enjoying this. David, you got us started. We're going to carry it from here. And I guess my question would be, if somebody like Eric, who has really held King Kong together, I mean, his organization with it and his promotion of it has made the whole thing really work. If Eric was just either unwilling or not willing to carry on, would the community keep that tradition going? Would they let it fall aside? if that the thing is about it is the community will be tested in these things in a way that is very real. We're just talking about it now, but I'm just telling you, man, the way things go, if the community can come back to a grassroots, events at your local gym, events at your local park, maybe your property if you got the space for it, an emphasis on just enjoying time with competitors, having fun, trying out wacky new shit, and maybe a little bit less on some of the other things that maybe we've fallen too hard on. Then I'd tell you that in 5 years from now, the sport would be pretty healthy, right? That'd be my, if we don't do that, I worry that, that the grip show would just become a historical piece, and we'll only be able to talk about what's already happened.
The old days.
You know what I mean? Because, this promoter got out of it, but nobody picked it up. And then, these guys over here got mad at those guys. And all of a sudden there's seriously 200 different rolling handles on the market with 200 rolling world champions in every weight class and bracket. And that looks like some clown shit in itself. Like this thing can go so strong in the future, or it can just absolutely become like just such a joke. And the sad thing is I've met a lot of people who play this sport. They're not a joke. They're not dumb. They're not lazy. They're not any of those negative things. But like as a community, we've been kind of dumb and we've been kind of lazy.
Yeah.
So like, with me coming back out today, man, that was really what was on my heart, was just to share. We're about to hit like, there's like the middle of the season kind of thing before the reset. So King Kong approaches in October, and then you've got, LA in January, and then you've got the Arnolds in March. So those are your big series event plus your two big expos that are coming. And the question is, how many people are going to be at those things? King Kong could be under 300. It could be over 1,000. For the LA Expo, it could be packed out weight classes where they had to pick and choose, or it could be maybe the same 20, 30 guys that have been there the last couple of years. The Arnold could be so competitive that they'd have to rent out a room and run 8 platforms, or it could be kind of the same old guys that have been able to make it before. But more importantly, I mean, there could be almost no contest, Zach, between here and now, or there could literally be so many contests that if you were doing a contest recap every Monday, you wouldn't be able to cover all the contests in a weekend.
Yeah,
that's
true.
Because to me, if and maybe that's kind of the thing, is like, hey, if you've done a contest this weekend, meaning you created the competitive environment, you had people come out, they agreed to a set of rules, I don't care which one, you guys lifted, and at the end of the day, the scoreboard ranked you from first to last. Send your fucking results in to Zach and give him a chance to ask you what y'all did. Because to me, if everybody got hip to how fun that part of the game is, bro, you wouldn't even be able to keep up with it.
No, yeah, I can see that happening. But right now, you're right. It is kind of, and I'm not saying everybody, because there are some good people that are doing what you're saying. They are introducing shit to people at the park. They're having these get-togethers. It's not even sanctioned. They're having little grip meetups. They're starting their own competitions. That stuff is happening. So I don't want it to seem like we're just bitching about stuff and everybody's lazy and nobody's doing anything. There are some people out there that are doing that and kind of taking some of the torches and running with it to some extent. But like you mentioned, as a whole, the majority pretty much just sitting around, kind of going to a couple things and kind of waiting for everybody else to do it. And maybe their actions and involvement in the sport don't line up with what they think their sport should be or how important it is, So yeah, there's definitely some people out there doing some good things, but if everybody really wanted to kind of get active and start going, yeah, there's no way I should be able to keep up with the recaps if everybody was wanting their sport to be as big as they really claimed, and they were actively involved in building it. It's very similar to, I'll draw one comparison is, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much with certain people, because what I am about to say is I am not getting into the finer details of politics right now. But there are certain people that will spend their entire life sitting around obsessing over political stuff, yet they are not taking any action outside of, well, I voted once every 2 to 4 years or something. But like, they're not doing anything else active. It's like, you're not running for an office. You're not making some change in the community. You're not actively helping any of these issues. You know what I mean? Other than, I guess, like the bare minimum, which would be, oh, well, I voted. But like, what else are you doing? You know what I mean? So it's like, when it comes to the sport, I feel like there's a lot of people that they want this to be on the biggest stages. They want the cash prizes to increase. They want all this stuff to go on. They want all this attention on them or whatever.
Yep.
But they're doing that bare minimum. Well, I went to 2 contests this year and ran 0, or yeah, I introduced 0 new people to the sport, but I post a lot of my lifting videos online. That got me some likes, but it's like, that's not necessarily building your sport. You know what I mean? So I guess that comparison I'm just saying is, there's certain people that, like, I just don't see the point of obsessing over a topic or obsessing over a thing so much if you're literally not doing anything about it. Like, why bitch about it if you're not even, like, I don't know. And there's certain people I've seen on actually fairly big shows where they'll be talking about, oh yeah, he's bringing eyes to the sport, and he's doing a lot for grip. And it's like, dude hosts 1 fucking competition a year, and it's like the same 5 or 6 people or something. And it's like, no, you're not. But what you are trying to do is just bring attention to yourself on social media, which that's fine too, if you want to do that, but don't portray, I don't know, you doing certain feats on TikTok or something as if you're like some ambassador for the sport that's making shit happen, because that's not it. To me, at least. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what, and to double down on what I've already offered. So for anyone who's made it this far in the podcast, I have a special offer for you. For absolutely no cost to you at any point in the exchange, if you want to host a contest event in your local area, you can reach out to Zach at the show. He will put you in contact with me, and I will specifically help you figure out how to do your deal. Okay? We will chat. I will get you sorted out, and I will help you. And I don't care if it's 1 of you or 10,000 of you. I will help you. But the big thing about it is, there needs to be a change in mindset, that either you just get happy with what you're being served right now, because it ain't going to change, or like whoever's hearing this says, you know what, man, from my own crew, we're going to change the game, because that's what I'd love to see. I'd love, I would like, man, and it still is this way. There's a couple crews that are still doing it, but I love to see like regional flavor, that this group of guys, they all kind of are into that one thing. So if you encounter them at a contest, you know that those motherfuckers are really good at that. Like, that shit is just a spice that this sport could have. And I can see so many good things that would come out of the idea of growing it to where it becomes unmanageable. Like, the sport needs to get big enough where nobody thinks they got their hand out over all of it, because that'll fix a lot of problems real fucking fast. Is just make it so big that it looks like anarchy from the surface, and make it where the complaints are that these guys are running so many contests and nobody knows what they're doing. Okay, cool. Because you know what you'd have if you had it to the point that you could legitimately make a point that there are so many contests going, and they, they're passing shitty lift here and there, and they got crazy events. Now you've got an actual pool of competitors, and it really would be possible to do a given contest and have 50 guys in a weight class. You know what I mean? Like, because that, then you'd really start to find out who's good and who's really good in this sport. And to me, we're gonna see it happen in some way, shape, or form. And I just feel like we could speed up the whole process. I feel like, man, 6 months and the whole scene would look different. I really believe that. That is how, I mean, not to say it'd be easy, but it really would be kind of easy in that you could see so many new people pick it, because this is one of those things that, man, when people see it, they usually like it. And if they like it, they might catch it. And when people catch it, they just go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Look at, like, you got an interest in grip training. A year later, you own like 5-inch dumbbells and 30 blocks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because think about that. If I flipped it and said, you got to go out and sell inch dumbbells, you'd tell me that there ain't nobody trying to buy them. But there's you, and you bought 5 of them your first couple of years of it. It's like, that's the thing, is the sport is caught. You don't need to teach anybody anything. It's caught, not taught. So you just bring people out and expose them to it, and you find that people see something in it that they really like. So you don't got to convince anybody of anything. You don't need to sell any idea. You create an opportunity, you give an invitation, and whoever shows up, fucking sit them down at the table and serve them. And what you'll find is your area will grow. It can be more complex than that. If you're somebody who thinks you need to plan out every detail, I mean, I'll help you, like I already offered, but I am telling you, it is that simple. It really is simple to grow out an area over a 5-6 month period.
I was saying, another thing I'll add is I spoke with Eric Hussein earlier today, and he mentioned that they are having there's a guy hosting an unsanctioned competition up in Canada where they're doing like a loadable dumbbell. So I mean, it's stuff that's just not sanctioned, like a loadable dumbbell. There's like a Saxon bar, like timed hold with different incremental weights. So it's stuff that's not going to be tracked, but it's stuff that's still testing, the grip strength and everything else. Another thing I'll mention is there's a dude named Alex, I think on Instagram goes by Pizza Alex in New York. Crazy gym setup and stuff. But there's a lot of these people that I think are starting to kind of miss and long for those days that we kind of spoke about with just the freedom of different events and things. And what Alex is doing is he's bringing back the Euro. He is big into steel bending, so he is doing I want to say there's some type of reverse bend. So it's been a long time since we've seen any kind of bending back in a grip competition. So there's a reverse bend, the Euro, and he has some formula calculated up for a blob and inch dumbbell combination where you're doing a combo lift, So
cool. Sounds weird. I like it.
But that's what I'm saying. So like those are the kind of events though that I think, like, when I hear about them, or I'm starting to like kind of like we're mentioning, it's like these same old formats and kind of the same old same and getting boxed into just a one-dimensional kind of thing. I think it's getting to that point where there are a lot of people that are kind of longing for the old days or kind of wanting that style of freedom. And I'm not going to say that it's going to be a drastic change, but I think that it is kind of shifting that way where people are wanting some of those old events back, like bringing the Euro back, kind of some traditional stuff. They're wanting to bring back some steel bending. They're wanting to just branch out and mix up the events that they're contesting. That way it's not always the same stuff. Here's the same 3 or 4 handles every time, and we pretty much already know who's going to do what. And, there's maybe the slightest variation to it. But so, like I said, there is some creativity going on that I think is kind of, out of all the competitions I'm seeing, I mean, that one up there in New York, that would be the one I would want to attend the most, just because, like, man, they're going to be lifting a blob and inch dumbbell combo. They're bending steel. Like
if you threw it out to guys that have done a lot of contests too, the weird shit, okay, so the funnest contest format that I have personally done was back when we were doing the 10 event format in Minnesota. Okay. And the thing is out of 10 events, you usually have 2 or 3 medleys. Bro, to me, medleys are the killer of all events. Medleys is where you find out who truly is the strongest guy here. Because it combines,
crazy dude. Oh yeah. No, keep going. I was gonna say, I talked to Eric. I talked to Eric about this thing, and at North American Championships, he had like a 40 item medley. And that was one of the things we spoke about for rankings. Was he was saying that he put so much emphasis on how guys performed in that medley because it was so diverse and such a big thing that like that medley carried a lot of weight, you know?
Well,
And
okay,
yeah,
let me. There are guys that I have beat in contests that I would tell you categorically they were stronger than me, but I'm more strategic, more rehearsed. I'm calmer in the event. My endurance goes farther. My preparation was deeper. They are unquestionably stronger than me, but I fucked them. Medleys are the very best events if you really want to find out who has a mind for the sport combined with the preparation. Especially my favorite, it's just like Eric was doing. Stick 40 items out. I'm going to tell you, you can start and finish wherever you want. And you got 3 minutes to make it happen.
yep.
And we're going to find out who's the dumbass. I mean, medleys always show you who the dumbass is in a room. Wow, you missed the blob 3 times in a row, and now you're still trying to lift it. And the clock is ticking, and that's only worth 1 point anyway. Medleys are, I mean, dude, it would be a fun thing just for 3 months to do contests where the medleys were always crazy, especially with shit that no one's seen before. Like, you got some weird ass rock in your backyard, put that in a medley. That's great. You know what? You want to make it really fun? Tell every competitor to bring 3 of their own weird ass things out. That way nobody can claim that the promoter gamed it by having access to all the shit up front. Just make it where you walk in a room and it's just 50 random ass items and you got 5 minutes to put up your score. That is something that you could actually promote at like an Instagram, TikTok level and have an actual following. Because if nothing else, I guarantee you 100,000 people would watch that video and say, what the hell are these idiots doing? Because that looks right. Like,
Yeah.
you got to have something to show the people. And man, for me, medleys were always so fun because even the guys, we had guys that would come out to contests like in Minnesota. When you looked at the top 3 at the event, the top 3 was always the same 3 guys. None of us were moving places either. I beat Browse. Browse beats everybody else. We go to medleys though, and all of a sudden you're placing a 4 to 20. Who the fuck knows what it's going to look like? Yeah. So medley made it to where the most people participating actually became competitive all of a sudden. And sometimes it's just because they made a better starting point at the round. And the funny thing there is the starting point is not even like strategically meta, because at the end of the day, like if you're a guy and you're like a badass steel bender, cool. That means you could either start steel bending first event and just crush it, or you could do steel bending last. No, you're not going to miss it. Maybe, you know what I mean? Maybe you suck at grippers and you're going to open at grippers because like you either got to get it or you can't. It's the event that exposes everybody and yet everybody loves it. So, you know, that can be coupled with the thing I've already said is, man, I don't even know what to do for a contest. I don't know. Throw a bunch of medleys. That'll be hilarious to watch later. And there's always astonishing things that we get to see.
Yeah, no, I think medleys are one of my favorite things, but that's also because I've always kind of leaned heavy towards the feats, you know, just different feats of strength. And essentially when you have a medley, that's all it is it's just a row of infinite feats. And what can you do? What can you pick up? You know? So
there is no divorcing grip strength and feats of strength. So if somebody thinks that they're 2 different things, it might just indicate that they're shitty on the feet side.
That's true.
You know what I mean? There's no separating the 2. It would be
strong is strong.
Strong. That's it. Strong is strong, and strength is never a weakness. So the idea of, or for someone to say something like, well, you know, I only do this and I don't do that. Okay. That's fine for you, especially, hey, if you have a previous injury stopping you, I understand because I'm in that same boat in some ways. But don't say that it doesn't count. You know what I mean? This sport came up in a way, for example, where steel bending and odd object lifting were in the same pocket. So to try to separate them out later, it just becomes a reason that you lose a guy that you normally would have had.
Yeah.
but that topic gets in a deeper one that I'd like to cover in an episode. I am running out of time.
No, hey, Adam, you're totally fine, man. Yeah, no, it's good. Like I said, we covered plenty of stuff, and like I said, mostly it's just about people taking action and kind of just asking, if everybody that's happy to be a part of this community of testing grip strength in different ways and different organizations, different formats. Yeah, it's kind of like a call to action just to say, hey, just what more could you be doing? Think about that, put a little bit more effort into it each day, work towards hosting a little bit more. You know what I mean? At least that's how I kind of view it. There's always a little bit more that could be done. So I think you gave some really great information on that, some great tips. And like I said, hopefully some people will, whether they comment, reach out to me, reach out to you, whatever that case may be. I'm glad you kind of extended that offer. And I'm the same way. If anybody needed help with something, yeah, reach out to me and we'll figure something out, And I've had several people where they've had event lineups that kind of aligned with one organization more than the other, but they sanctioned with the other organization. And I'm like, why don't you just dual sanction? If you're going to sanction, why don't you sanction with the one that you're going to get more credit for and just get your lifters on both lists? If they're all going to be doing lifts that are counted by both organizations, why do one and not the other? Put them on both leaderboards if they're, you know what I mean? I just think it's better for people. So yeah,
I mean, don't feel that you need to pick a side, because the real thing is, the question is, what is going to be your sport activity? What interests you? Who do you want to lift with, and where do you want to do it? Because at the end of the day, every contest is actually defined, most importantly, by who was there, what did y'all do, and where did you do it at? So don't put yourself in any kind of box that you don't actually sit in. If you're a person and you're like, oh my God, I need to lift on the same stage as Carl Myerscough one day, then go do that. If you're a person who says, oh my God, I want to go, pinch on the Euro of Jed Johnson, then go do that. Don't feel a loyalty to anything other than whatever your objectives and goals you've set for yourself are. And amazingly, you'll find that actually that's just like everybody else. Everybody else is looking out for their own ass first too. So don't feel like you don't have to do that, especially as a new guy. The real thing is that I want everyone who has an interest in playing this game to be able to play it in 10 to 20 years from now. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like it's the difference of idea, and they had some traction, and they had some unbelievably great lifters. And that organization wasn't able to break out of a couple areas. So they were very much like a Midwest lifting league. They had some phenomenal promoters in that local area. And in a couple areas, like James Fuller up in Maine, he was one of James is huge in all around weightlifting. You look at that guy and you look at everything he accomplished and you think, what if there would have been 50 more guys that are just like James that just love to do it, but also invited somebody to come lift with them? And that would have been a sport that we all would have known instead of CrossFit. Think about that. All around weightlifting existed way before CrossFit. But if you look at how they do their contest, I mean, a modern day CrossFit competition and the old rules of all around weightlifting, there's so much similarity that you could have called one from the other. And for grip sport and all the different things that, grip sport, hand sport, is it arm lifting? Is it steel bending? Whatever the fuck you want to call it, people getting together to see how they stack up against themselves, against others that have that similar spirit, similar motivation, similar values. That's what I want to see continue as the years go on. I'm not attached to the names of who's promoting what. I'm not attached to what event is in style, out of style. But it would be nice for me personally to think that if in 3-4 years from now, when I decide to come back out around and start doing events, that there's more events to choose from than there are right now. And I mean, I feel like this coming year could be a deciding factor. So, man, I've really enjoyed getting to rap with you tonight. I really enjoy having me back out on the show. I'd love to come back out and talk about really any topic you want to cover in the future, man. I think that especially what you're doing right now, Zeris, you have an infinite amount of content to be able to deliver to the community, because there's a huge area for it. There's a lot of people that they're just, man, I guarantee you they would far rather listen to somebody rap on a contest that happened over the weekend rather than their fucking weather report or whatever lie is coming out of the mainstream media today. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah, no, I get it.
that challenge I want to give you, man, is whatever amount of this is good for you to do in the capacity you're doing it. I'd like you to find your limits and then work within the limits.
Yeah.
And that'll make more sense as time goes on, but that's what I'd like for you personally.
Okay. Yeah. No, Adam, that makes sense to me, man. Like I said, that's kind of the goal moving forward as well. But yeah, hey, thanks for stopping by again, giving us your time. And like I said, this is good information for somebody if they're a longtime promoter, veteran of the sport, or if you're a day one person and you're just trying to get something started in your backyard. This really applies, across the board. So I really like the info you gave us. And like I said, hopefully some people will, take you up on the advice and offers and stuff like that. And no, we'll definitely have you back on to cover more topics. And hopefully I can, we'll work something out where we get, 3 or 4 of us on a panel, or get some of the, you know what I mean? Some of the big players, I don't want to say necessarily debating, but, throwing different ideas back and forth and kind of mixing it up and getting into it. And I don't know, just moving the sport forward. And that's really what a lot of this is for, is to move the sport forward so that, we don't check back in. Yeah, we don't check back in 5 years and it is the same. Because, then we kind of failed and we haven't really done our job. So yeah, I think it's just kind of holding the community accountable and making people kind of take a look at themselves and figure out, why are you in the sport? What do you want to do? And how are you going to do that? And like I said, yeah. So like I said, thanks again, Adam. And like I said, we'll be in touch, man. And yeah, got a lot more to discuss and got a lot more episodes coming. So yep, thanks again.
Excellent. Well, I'll talk to you soon.